All right, what would your monthly payment be on this house in Snohomish, Washington, listed at $1.15 million? When you're looking around at houses in the early stages, it's helpful to start to dial in the numbers a little bit, even if they're not exact, even if you're not quite ready to reach out to a lender and talk specifics. We're going to look at this house, and we're going to look at two different scenarios. We're going to look at one where you're bringing 50% down and one where you're bringing 65% down. So both of these are basically assuming this is, we're looking at a pretty nice house out here in Snohomish, $1.15 million. We're basically assuming you're moving from your first or second home into this is kind of your forever home. This is kind of your dream spot, and you've already got some equity in other houses that when you sell, you're going to have some cash to bring to this deal. Just as far as features of the house, this is a single-family residence. Obviously, it is built in 2016. It's on a half-acre lot. So it is not massive, but it's a little bit of space, which is great. And there is an HOA of $50 a month. So you have a little bit of that to add to the mortgage. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, awesome spot out in Snohomish. So let's talk numbers. Let's look at the quotes. All right, so we'll walk through these two quotes separately. We'll start with this 65% down scenario, and then we'll move over to this 50% down scenario. Down here, you can see, just to give you a ballpark of which one you might be closer to. Down here in the 65% down scenario is $760,000, it's estimated cash to close. You're going to have to bring $760,000 to the table. And then over here is $589,000. So that's whatever you have with whatever cash you have on hand you're planning to bring to the deal, plus whatever cash you're going to be able to net out of the sale of your current house. So let's start with just the total monthly payment here on the 65% down scenario. I'm going to talk about what the monthly payment is. I'm going to talk about the cash you're going to need to bring, and then I'm going to talk about the qualifying, what it would take to qualify. Would a lender give you this loan? So here, $3,541 is the monthly payment. You can see that straight off the bat. That's the total monthly payment. And all of this is estimate. This is ballpark. None of this, they're using assumptions. So both of these scenarios are assuming you have a credit of 760. And they are both assuming you are not a first-time home buyer, which sometimes gets you access to a little bit better pricing, but it's not super relevant in this price point, obviously. So the breakdown of this monthly payment is we have HOA dues of $50 a month, and that may be paid separately, but as far as calculating your monthly payment, it's going to be included there. And then insurance, homeowners insurance of $150 a month, taxes of $663 a month. And so both of those are going to be the same. Homeowners insurance and taxes are going to be the same. And actually that homeowners insurance number is going to be pretty low. It's going to be a good bit higher. That estimate is pretty low. It just depends on your coverage. It depends on your provider and how much coverage you're getting on the house. But that number is going to be pretty low. So expect at least probably another $100 a month of homeowners insurance. And then that last portion is principal and interest, $2,678. So that is obviously a function of your loan amount of $402,000 when you are bringing 65% down. So this number right here, 35%, is loan to value. That is a ratio of the loan amount to the total value of the house. Interest rate. Right now we're showing 6.999, and that is pretty much no points. If you're unaware, points are a fee that you can pay up front to get a lower interest rate. Credit is the opposite of that. Credit is the lender you can take a higher interest rate if you're willing to take a higher interest rate. The lender will credit you some money towards your closing costs. But this is assuming it shows $89 a month. That's pretty much as close to 0 points as this rate sheet will show. So that ends up with an interest rate of 6.999, which is pretty reasonable to expect at this time. It's not going to be the same everywhere you go. But this is March 15th when I'm filming this, and so that's a pretty reasonable expectation right now. And then, so what that ends up being is the other portion you have to consider is closing costs. Right now we're showing closing costs of $12,848. That is dependent on lots of different things, and so that could be a range. But typically, assuming you're not bringing points, you don't have heavy other fees going on, then that range that number is probably pretty reasonable to expect for this price point. For this price point, it's going to be a little on the higher end, but generally we give the range of about $8,000 to $12,000. Typically, closer to the $11,000 to $12,000 in our area, in this greater Seattle area. And then the estimated total cash to close of $761,547. So it's a pretty high down payment. You're getting to a high percentage down payment. It's a high price point. So again, this is assuming you have some assets to bring into the deal. This isn't like a first-time home buyer situation. You've been in a house probably for a while, probably selling that house, and you have cash to bring from that deal. So as far as qualifying, the way qualifying works is that lenders evaluate your debt-to-income ratio and make sure that that is below 50%. So your debt-to-income ratio, your DTI, is your total monthly debts over your gross monthly income. So total monthly debts, it takes your proposed new housing payment and adds that to any other debts that you have going on. Student loan debt, car debt, whatever, credit card debt. So any other debts that you have going on, adds that all together and divides it by your gross monthly income, which is your income before taxes. And that number needs to be less than 50%. That's as far as qualifying. So as far as affordability, obviously everyone has different rules of what they're comfortable with, but just as far as whether the lender will give you the loan, that's how they figure it out. And one thing to be mindful of is if you're at this point where you are buying your maybe second or third house, then you're probably aware of this. But gross monthly income is income in the lender's eyes. So they don't always view income the same way you do, especially if you have variable income or are based on salary or heavy bonus or you're self-employed. If you are entire salary, sorry, I said salary, I meant commission. If you are entirely salary or almost entirely salary, they'll pretty much usually use all the salary that you have. So what that means is, as far as qualifying, if the rule is that your total monthly debts divided by your gross monthly income needs to be no more than 50%, then at a minimum, to qualify for this monthly payment, you need to be making $7,082 a month, which is about $85,000 a year. Now, again, that's an affordability, that's a qualifying rule, that's not an affordability rule. Affordability is in your wheelhouse. You figure out what you're comfortable with. All right, let's look at the 50% down scenario. So right off the bat, you can see that the monthly payment is $4,689. And it's a pretty big difference right away. You can see from the 65% down scenario. And typically, maybe 15% difference in down payment won't make that big of a difference in your monthly payment. But obviously, this is a high price point, so 15% is going to make a pretty big dent in what your loan amount is. The components of this monthly payment are, again, 3 of them are going to be the exact same because they're based on the house. The HOA dues, $50 a month, the homeowner's insurance. Again, I apologize, this estimate is a little low. I should have put that higher. It should be probably around $250 a month. As an estimate. I can't tell you what your final number is going to be, but just as a reasonable estimate, this number, maybe not quite 250, but it's going to be up there. This 150 estimate is probably more accurate for something in the $800,000, maybe $800,000 price point. So it just depends on what your coverage is, what you're getting covered, and who your provider is. That's going to determine what your price is. Taxes of $663 per month, and again, all 3 of those are going to be based on the house, not the loan amount, not the loan structure. And then no mortgage insurance, you'll notice, for all of these, obviously, because you're above 20% down. And then that just leaves you with principal and interest. And this amount is a function of your loan amount, which is $575, because we're at 50% down, and your interest rate. Again, if you missed the last section, interest rate is about 6.999, and that is just roughly where we're at right now. I'm filming this on March 15th. That's a pretty reasonable expectation. It's not a guaranteed rate. You might end up lower, you might end up higher. Again, this is based on several assumptions, one of those being your credit score, which is 760. And then points or credit, that's the interest rate that we have at basically no points here. Again, points are a fee you can pay up front to get a lower interest rate. This shows $127, so just to put that into perspective, that's basically 0 points. Usually rate sheets won't show exactly at 0 points. They just show certain increments, and this is as close to 0 as this rate sheet was showing at the time. That number could be thousands and thousands of dollars, so that is pretty close to 0. Basically no points to get this interest rate here. And then other closing costs. Now, closing costs are going to be a little bit higher here because the loan amount's a little bit higher. Those are based on tons of different things. Some of them are in the lender's control, some of them are not. But this is, at this price point, you're probably going to be above $10,000 of closing costs, assuming you're not getting them covered in any other way by the seller or the lender for any reason. So you're probably going to be above $10,000. That's a pretty reasonable estimate. Maybe a little high, but could be pretty realistic. And then estimated cash to close of $589,647. That's including your closing costs and your down payment. As far as qualifying for this scenario, the monthly payment is higher, so qualifying is going to be higher. If you missed how qualifying works, you can go back to this section here. But basically, your debt to income ratio needs to be less than 50%. So if we're assuming a monthly payment of $46.89, then to be less than 50% on that, you'd have to be making about $9,378 a month, which breaks down to about $113,000 a year. And this is a qualifying rule. It's not an affordability rule. I said that before if you missed it. And so, affordability is in your discretion. It's up to your discretion. Qualifying this is just, will the lender give you this loan? And that is income that they need to deem reliable. That has to be provable. So if you're self-employed or heavily commission or variable hours, sometimes that's a little tougher to prove. It's very provable. It's fine. You can use it if assuming it meets certain standards. If your salary for all of that, it's going to be pretty straightforward. If you wanted to look at a real quote for your exact situation, if you wanted to get a sense of whether you would qualify for a particular house you're looking at, if you'd like to see your numbers, please do reach out. My name is Landon Buteau. I work with a team based in Bothell, Washington, a mortgage team based in Bothell, Washington. We are a mortgage broker. We have access to a lot of different lenders. We have great competitive pricing, and we work really hard to serve as mortgage advisors, not just a place to go get a loan. We'll work hard to provide you good advice, because there's lots of different decisions that go into choosing the right loan, because you really do choose tons of aspects of your loan, how your loan is set up. And not all lenders will walk you through all that and their impactful decisions. So we work hard to provide good advice on that. If you're interested in getting a quote on that or just reaching out to start the conversation, there is a video linked in the description here. You can watch that video to see what it's like to work with our team, or you can just go ahead and reach out directly. Our contact information is in there as well.